Map-ccidents with happy little pens. Let's journey down the road together and find out where it ends. Bring your creativity, forget what a week will bring. Drawing, breathing, bringing all new worlds into being.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Happy Little Map-ccidents. I thought I would start off this week by showing you the map that I've been working on for my own book and how much I have done. And that is that I finished the initial work on it. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a show before we move on to work on the Jormungandr map. So let's give you a nice big display here. So this is a map for the world of Calatai. The next step that I'm going to be working on is actually on a separate piece of paper, drawing all of the cities so that I can then put them overlay onto this. And I probably will, on a totally separate piece of poster board, build a border that I can then overlay over this particular map. So wanted to show you that before we moved over to find out how everybody's doing tonight and do some work on our map. So what is everybody up to tonight? Working on a map? Are you reading tonight, writing? I believe I see Sparrow Springs here, and I wanted to know how many words are you at? Because I'm pretty sure you hit a pretty massive milestone today. Thanks, Jared. So, T, also, what are you working on tonight? And Jared, how about you? What is everybody working on tonight or reading? What I'm going to do right now is there's still a lot to be done that I didn't get around to over the week. Still working on our two primary land masses, but I'm going to start working on forests and showing you how I do forests, and we can kind of talk through different ways that you can show that. I see that Sparrow has that announcement. You hit 100K. Congratulations. That is such a massive milestone. Yeah, just congratulations. That's so cool. Hi, Anitha. So, what are you reading tonight, or are you prepping for the week? What are you working on right now? Uh-oh, daunting task, it looks like. All right, so I'm going to work on forests. So the thing with forests, when you're making your map, like we kind of talked about last week, I think it was Jared that brought up the question that, do each of the mountains represent specific mountains, or are they a generalization? And I said, really depends on the map. I tend to use them as a generalization, but specific mountains that I put a lot of focus on, like this one right here, is just so definitive. It is probably a particular mountain, whereas there aren't only 10 more mountains down the range, right? There's probably a lot more, especially in this space. Same with forests. I have seen forests done where you draw every individual tree. What I personally like to do is to draw my outline of my forest and then put rising out of those specific tree types. So, like we had talked, let's put up here. I'm going to put a a forest, and all I'm doing is just giving, making it like a cloud, like a happy little cloud. So I've got an area that I want to have covered with forest, and obviously when you're drawing these, it's not like every single the forests you show are not the only forests. These are just the ones that are important. I mean, a lot of the world is covered in forests, but it's the big ones like the Black Forest of Germany is a very specific looking one. So this right here is obviously an important forest. That doesn't mean in the middle of the plains there aren't copses of trees. All right, so I've done this kind of foresty area. I could leave it like that. I've seen them done like that, and you could just put more fluffy marks on it. Now people are going to know that it's a forest. But if you want to be very specific about the type of forest it is, one, you can add details like showing trunks coming out of the bottom of the forest. But another thing I like to do is, let's assume that this is a deciduous forest. I'm going to put a couple little trees rising up out of it. But then over here by the mountains, it's probably going to turn to conifer. So you can draw conifers. And one of the best ways I saw to do that is just draw some spikes, because sometimes if it's not a pure conifer forest, there might be a few conifers sticking up out of the growth. Just doing spikes, drawing actual like Christmas trees. It works. I tried it. I felt it was looking too hokey on my maps. That was just me. As you head farther north, maybe everything's a conifer, right? And that's what you want to convey. You can also show different types, down here we had a swamp, right? So in our swamp, so I can get it a little closer here. In our swamp, we don't want it to be a dense forest because that would be like a jungle, right? So rather than that, I'm just going to show some marsh, which can be as much as just showing that there's standing water. And then having bits of shrubbery, maybe an odd looking mangrove. It just shows that there's a tree or two that obviously it's representative in this case, right? The cool thing, Sparrow, about forests is it's okay to do 5 different ways, right? Because you can convey totally different areas. On my other map, I've got bamboo forests here, whereas up here this is a deciduous forest, and then farther out here we've got conifers rising out of this forest here. So you can be very specific. You can just do deciduous everywhere. You're good. But you can't. But it's up to you. Do you want to convey that? Nope, we're farther north, and I want this to be a Norse-inspired culture or a shipbuilding culture, and they're going to need lots of really tall, straight pine trees for that. Or do you want to show that it's a jungle? So different kinds of forests are going to be fine. And of course, as you know, Sparrow, as long as you don't ink, you can always change it. Once you ink, yeah, that's just how it is. But if you're working through the whole map and penciling everything, and then you get to the end, you're like, nope, this is the forest I want. You can come back in and erase the old forests and do them again, unfortunately. But it's not inked yet, right? So you have a lot of creative control while you're kind of fleshing out your map and starting to imagine where your countries are sitting. Yeah. So, all right. So I've got my swamp I did down here. Hadn't really determined what we were going to do down here in this land, but this whole continent doesn't have a whole lot of plains, and maybe some of them up here, maybe down here. So maybe we'll just leave this as a plainland. And so I'm going to go ahead and put some hills in there to show that it's not flat, at least in everywhere. I'll go ahead and put some hills going up this section of land right here. All I'm doing is little curves, which you can do a couple of groups. I'll put a little grass on them. And then down here, I want it to be flatter. So I'm just going to put some tufts of grass. You know what? But out here, it turns into a scabland. So this would be like little rocky outcroppings that stick up out of the grassland. So I've got these rocks. So there's always little different things you can do. You know, if you're drawing like a D&D map, you can be very specific on very unique landforms, and that can be true in any fantasy map too. But you want to decide, you know, what are you going for? Are you wanting to have a world where every 30 miles there's a new event that can be used, like in a Dungeons and Dragons map, or are you just having fun, right? So if you're having fun, have fun. You know, throw a volcano in here, throw some clouds, throw a dragon on there. If you ever get a chance to play the game Small World, there are so many little fun affectations on their maps from, you know, is it a griffin or a dragon or a flying serpent thing that's flying over this particular land? And there's just so many little fun things you can kind of, add to your map. So drink some tea. I don't know what you're all drinking tonight, but I needed some tea tonight, though it is decaf. I have had more than enough caffeine today. Let's see. All right, so we were working on here on this grassland, and I'm just going to go ahead and take the grassland all the way out. I don't need to put grass everywhere. It's just an indication of where things are. And I'm going to leave it mostly blank because maybe we'll put some cities in here later. So I'm pretty happy with this particular landmass. Oh, there's these islands here I haven't really defined. So let's just finish those off, and I'm going to fix my camera here so you can all actually see what I'm doing. Yeah, that'll work. All right. Have these islands. Maybe they're pirate islands or... You know, just let your pencil do what it needs to do on its own. Or mouse, in your case, Sparrow. It's kind of funny. I'm very fortunate that I'm left-handed, but I use the mouse with my right hand, and I draw on the computer. Not as well, but close enough. With my right hand on the mouse. So I'm very fortunate because it means that I am using a little bit more of, you know, both sides of my brain when I'm trying to create maps. And obviously not right now, but I'm kind of glad that I kind of forced myself to do that as a younger man, because I'm old now. So I'm pretty happy with this. Let's work down here. We've got this section of this split that happened, and maybe it actually is a split, and these are unusable coasts for part of it. Maybe not right here. No, actually right here is a great spot. Let's put some cliffs. Easy enough. I'm just doing some downstrokes. I'll go ahead and just add some surf at the bottom of that, which makes it so that maybe this literally was a land cleft into by something at some point. And this landmass needs some mountains. So there are no mountain ranges. This mountain range did not continue down through here. So there's not going to be mountains that are going to do a run through. But we are looking at these two areas. There's another split right here, right? So let's start a mountain range that actually is going to move its way through both of these. And I'm going to bring it as a spine down along this edge right here to show you something. So we're going to start with our mountains. And all right. Find yourself map people you love to follow on Instagram, because they'll give you good ideas, just kind of seeing how they do things. Then you can figure out how to spin it for yourself. I, with my mountains, tend to stick with the conical style. I have seen other maps done, other mountains done in other ways. My favorite map creator is Misty B. I think it's Misty, MISTY .B, 3 E's. And it is just, she's so great. She does some really great stuff. For the most part, she's doing digitally. And she does some, look at her Middle Earth work. There's just so much that she's done. She doesn't post a whole lot right now. Probably has a whole lot of professional jobs that she can't actually show off. But just, she's worth checking out. And then through her, you'll find a ton of other ones. But the D&D Mapper, I think, is one name. But they're great to check out to see what they're doing for their forests, for their mountains, so you can get a good idea of what you want to do for yours. All right, so I'm going to start to lower the size of my mountains. I'm going to go to hills, because at one point this land right here was connected, and the reason water came through here is because it was a low land. But that does not mean that you can't have then islands. That would be where there used to be mountains and large, highland hills. So I wanted to show that you can use, when a mountain range hits the coast and continues, that's going to cause a lot of islands to form, or just exist because they're sticking up out of the water, because maybe the water rose from where it was. Hey, Tori. All right. And I'm going to continue. These hills are going to then turn back into mountains. And let's throw a big mountain in here. So to indicate that it's a single mountain, obviously the easy part is the top, right? It's the ridge. But you can draw several places where you can do some shading later on. And it's going to have other mountains around it. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. So we got our mountains. We've got a great land here. We're gonna actually do some reverse. So we had air flowing over on our main continent towards the lake in a way. In this case down here, I think we're gonna be looking at this sea right here being a major contributing factor to the moisture content. And in fact, we'll put mountains in here, but leave all of this as kind of a lowland. Maybe there's just a lot of monsooning happening here. And if we want to create a monsoon, we want to do like the Himalayas and Australia do. So they act like a circulation. They create circulation between the desert of the middle of Australia, which creates a lot of heat, and the Himalayas being cold. And the back and forth of those two pressure systems cause all that monsooning through Indonesia and India and back and forth. So to do that, we may need to actually extend this land over here and add kind of a Himalaya situation, and then we could create a desert up here in this landmass, and that will allow us to kind of create some island culture and some monsooning. That'll work. All right. So, like I said, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to erase our coast down here. And we're going to give ourselves a big mountain mass. I'm not even going to put a coast in yet until I can figure out where our mountains are. In fact, right here, we're going to put our Everest. So this will be our biggest peak. I'm going to start it right up here and butt it up underneath these, and then give it some defining edges. You know, this is nowhere near as big as the actual Himalayan plateau, which you don't really realize how big it is unless you like get on Google Earth and take a look. But there's just so much going on there. It stretches so far. All right, I'm going to give a coast. So I'm just going to let I add a little extra land down here just in case I want to put a little kind of a almost impossible to get to country. All right. And then above the Himalayas, I'm going to put some hills. And of course, oh, we can't forget rivers, right? So let's, in fact, we can do a whole river system. So rivers. Kind of a fjord system of all of the water that just runs off this mountain range. And up here, you know what? Let's go and put these lands together. And we're going to have some hills so that we can make a river or several rivers. Go up our second group here. All right. So we've got a nice big thick river that thins out here. All right. Now I've got some cool opportunities. And I'm going to shatter the end of this landmass here and turn it into a bunch of islands. All right. Let's assume the inside of the river here is a civilization that maybe has deforested quite a bit, but over on the other side of the river, we're going to have our forest. You know, it's always creeping in, so there's lots of forestry. These are just specifically the forest is still here, areas of our southern section. Put another forest up here. And a couple more mountains. Because these mountains started right here, maybe there's an island or two off of the coast. All right. And then I talked about let's make a desert here to act as part of the circulation between the icy area and the hot, dry area. So we're going to create kind of our Australia with our giant desert spiders. Because who doesn't need? What world doesn't need a giant desert spider, right? Maybe people ride them. So I'm going to define my coast. We're going to add a couple of mountains just to create some water. And then we'll give ourselves a river, nice big long river meandering through the desert. All in Nile. All right, so got a river. All right, desert. So there's a couple of different ways we can do deserts. One, you can do just sand dunes. I will throw some sand dunes in. Let's do some sand dunes up right here. So you do more of a shallow hill with a bit of a spike, and then flow your ridges so it feels like the Sahara, right? But you can also say, all right, we got a desert, we need a place for our desert spiders to live, right? So let's put them right here, and we're going to do some kind of rocky outcroppings or mesa. That gives the spiders something to build their nests across, right? Needless to say, this is not a country that my wife is going to visit. And you can also just do dots, right? So down here below these sand dunes, we're going to go out into a flatter area. And you don't want to just dot everything. It can look a little messy. But you can indicate with sand by having groups of bits of sand. I don't normally do that anymore, but you can do it. If you're going really symbolic and doing like a Dungeons and Dragons map, again, you can just do, I've seen just where you do 1, 2, 3. And it just indicates that there's sand. Again, it's not ideal. But it's your map. Do what you want. That's a fun little peninsula. Maybe these mesas are actually a calcium rich outflow, and they have a nice acidic river that comes out of them. You know, for those desert acid calcium spiders. We're just going to keep throwing on titles to these spiders, and by the end, they're going to be everybody's nightmare. All right, desert. So the other thing you can do is long ridges. So this is more windswept. And showing that there's that wind has come and really sheared those dunes down almost flat. Yeah, you could give them human faces. You could do it like the skulls on the back of the Zelda spiders. I can't think of what their actual name is in the game, but or you just throw another face on them. I mean, why not, right? Make it creepy. And maybe they're sentient too. Maybe they're termite spiders that live underground, and these rocky outcroppings are actually the output of their cities. Always keep notes as you're going along. So if you're like, yep, I most certainly need to have spiders, obviously you can just do a note on the map and just, draw yourself a spider just to remind you that it's there. Or pull out your notebook, pull out your moleskin, and actually jot a note down saying, at desert, there will be spiders. All right, and then up here, because we have our desert down here, we need let's do a prairie, very dry prairie. And so we want to do dry prairie. Rather than just doing tufts, you can do scraggly tufts to show that it's a bit more sagebrushy. And now we have our Australia with every possible desert biome and nasty thing that you can imagine. Because if you don't have a land that tries to kill everybody, is it a fantasy? And if that's so, do we live in a fantasy? And why aren't there more adventurers going to Australia to seek out dungeons, right? Because I bet there's dungeons out there. All right, cool. Making some headway. I'm going to come back down here to this land here and kind of define what's going on. It's going to need somewhere to take the water off of all these mountains. Because remember, if we have all of our water circulating down in here, right in here, we've got a lot of water coming this direction too, which means that the water is going to pour towards the mountains and then back away. So there's going to be rivers. In fact, we can make this an absolute riverland. Let's do it again. We'll do lots of rivers. And that then creates natural borders. So you could have a whole group of states or different countries that are all butted up alongside each other as kind of as neighbors, and they are all separated by rivers. And so they're probably also fighting over the riverways and arguing over who has the rights to the trees. Cool. All right. Yeah, what are the Australians hiding down there that they're not telling us about? All their dungeons that they've built themselves or they are still discovering. We know some of their treasures, like the whole Kimberley coast, which is the west coast, is pearls and then I forget what, I think the eastern side is opals, right? So they've got a lot of cool, really cool treasures. Next, they're going to find vibranium down there. All right, so we're working our way up. Remember, there was this tail that we've got here, the dragon's tail for Jormungandr. It's going to go up here. So we have a lot of options of things we can do. Every single island's going to be a little different. So let's just see what we make. Kate, how is your map coming, and how is your story coming along? Making some good headway, or are you still in a world building phase? Or are you drafting right now? All right, I'm going to put a forest down here. And this is going to be a forest with some giant trees that dominate it. Maybe some wood elves live here. Kate, are you a discovery world, or are you a discovery writer, or do you outline? You know, Anita, the other thing with adding a whole lot of greenery is also to indicate a lot of undiscovered areas too, right? So you know there's places out there that aren't yet civilized, but you know that they can be explored, and also treacherous. There's a lot of places, even in where we live, that can be very undiscovered, like the forests of the Olympias in or the not the Olympias, Cascades in Washington State are very vertical. So who knows what's up in those mountains? My preference is to think it's Bigfoot, but so Kate, you said this for this book. How many books have you written now? Are there a bunch of trunk novels that all of us need to still see? Okay, so that's kind of a crazy forest. All right, let's move our way up the coast here. And I am going to, you know what? We're going to put a giant volcano on this one, and this island is just going to be wrecked. We're going to do it like Mount St. Helens. It's going to be a completely blown, like Krakatoa, completely blown volcano. So are they not going to see the light of day because you're not happy with them, or because they were written when you were a lot younger, or are they just you don't feel like you've told the story that you want to tell yet? And has anybody else ever read them, or just you? So let's make some steaming smoke coming off of it. And T, do you think that she needs to let other people read it so that others can start to tell her how great her writing is? So it's not just you? That's a good question, T. So are you talking like big old saguaro cactuses or just an indication of like a flat cactusy desert? Because if we're doing just kind of a flat desert, just small indication of cactuses, obviously they're going to be very few and far between where they grow. So we can do is just give it a central staff for the, and then give it 2 arms. Don't be cartoony. That can be easy, right? And then put them few and far between. Yes, cactuses grow together, but you're indicating that there is not a lot between things. And you could even put a couple sage, scrabbly sages in between them. And there you go, just like that. So in that case, you could also put them in the middle of your mesas. So you got a mesa here, just throw a cactus in there. Then there's no denying that it's a desert. You know, put Pecos Bill howling at the moon on top of one of the mesas. All right. Let's see. Okay, so we got our volcano. We gave it some smoke. I'm going to, I don't really want to indicate it with color yet, but the idea of this whole island is just destroyed. So it's probably pretty darn black. So I might just go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick shading just to remind myself that later I want this to be blackened if I come in and color this. And when this, so now that we've moved on from this to here, because the volcano is here on the coast and it shattered its own coast, it's going to cause a tidal wave. So there's going to be an effect on this coast here. So let's shatter this coast and make it so I have my initial where my coast was. I'm going to dig farther in and set a new coastline, and then where there was coast, draw some islands, because this volcano when it went off was not good. And that being said, it's probably also depending, and since it's still smoking, this area is probably depopulated. There's probably nobody living here now, except that maybe there is. I mean, sometimes a city gets destroyed by a volcano, and where do they build the next city? The same place the old one was. And that's you have to decide when you're doing your world building is how stubborn are these people? And let's be honest, most people are pretty stubborn. All right. And in this one, we're going to do reverse. We're going to give it some more mountains. In fact, no, what we could even do is if this is a volcano here, it means there's probably a string of old spots where the volcano was, right? So let's so Anita, the smoke here is just indicating there is smoke. Do you mean it if the smoke? You mean if the volcano blew the other direction, or do you mean if the smoke was just going off in a different direction? Because if it did that, I mean, if there's enough volcanoes going off, you're going to have a greenhouse effect, right? Which you could totally do. If it's just the one and there's smoke coming in here, it doesn't mean you couldn't have. Yeah, you could have issues of toxic gases that are affecting this land over on this spot here. I'm going to put these spots where the volcano used to be as just single mountains. I'm going to make them smaller and smaller because they wore themselves out. And then here is we're going to do a massive crater right here where it first blew its top before it moved. All right. Yeah, you can see that. Okay. That's a good way of putting it, that if you're not quite ready to edit it, the fact is all of our first drafts need work, and you got to be ready. You got to be ready to edit them. But all of our ideas are not bad, because they just got to be polished, and that's okay. So, and you may come back someday, and you may and look at those ideas and realize that you can reuse some of them, and other ideas, yeah, you're going to look at and say you're a much better writer now today than you were then, and now you can write a better version of that story. I mean, my Collation Saga was a story I worked on since I was a kid, and it changed as I was a kid and into college, and then I wrote it after college, and it was not good. But because I gave it 6 years after that to not touch it, when I came back, I was able to tear it down to scratch and start over. And I'm really glad I did, because it's a much better story now. Because it's not the same story at all. It just has a lot of the same characters that were in the originals. And you may go back and revisit them yourself and realize that you had some great characters in there that just needed to be put into a new phase in their lives. And that could be all it takes sometimes. All right, we have our crater over here. So this is probably a pretty rich area for minerals, and maybe not a whole lot of life. So let's separate it from the other island a little bit more, so it's even harder for most animals to get there, except for birds, obviously. So there's going to be some plant life. Maybe it's kind of a Mauritius or Mauritania is where the dodos were, and we'll have a bit of a forest here and here, but not elsewhere on the island. Okay. And we're getting farther enough north now, too, that we can start putting some conifer forests in. I'd put some palm trees up. We could put some palm trees in, but we'd have no way of knowing whether a swallow could carry a coconut this far north, or two swallows with a vine between the two of them. I suppose they could. Maybe there's a lake up here where there's ladies distributing swords as a means of forming a new government. Who can know? Yeah. And this one we're going to, make sure you can see it, we're going to completely cover this one in trees and the next couple of them because they're a little bit harder to reach. So has anybody here set any goals for themselves for this week? Number of books they want to get read or words written? And what are you doing to prepare yourself for that? I'm going to be finishing editing an audiobook and then editing my own audiobook for the sequel to Thrice, which has been recorded, and now I need to master the files. So that's my goal for this week. All right, and out here we've got the spike of the tail. So we have our dragon tail right here. Here's our spike at the end. So I'm gonna try. I'm gonna, you know what? Let's just cover it with mountains and make it just a gnarly land. And Anitha, have you started these books, or are these books that you're just finishing up your reading on? You know what? Sometimes the weekend gets away from you, and that's okay. Oh, it sounds like a good week. You're gonna finish 2 books in that case, right? One physical and one audio. Do you do it? Do you listen to them at work, or is it just at home, or while you're driving, or what? I am not worried, Anitha. You pulled it off last time, and uh, you're a very prolific reader. So I have zero worries that you're going to get as much reading done as you want to get done. So here's where we are at right now with our Dragon World map. So I can get a good shot here. So we fleshed out the head. We skipped the body. We'll come back to that probably next week. And then we've worked on this right in here. So I would say we're making pretty good headway. I will try to get some of this fleshed out over the course of this week, and that way next week we can start working on inking. Maybe that would be really cool. There we go. Okay. I'm going to, before we finish up for the night, work on right here, which is where we had our claw that was coming out of the earth. Try to indicate that it's cool that you can listen at work. It's not not everybody can get to do that, so that's really fortunate that you get to do that. Are you still listening to Lord of the Rings by Andy Serkis, or are you reading physical for that one? And how about you, Kate? What are you reading this week? We just started listening through The Hobbit with the kids, and then we'll proceed on to the other three. We bought them all at Christmas. It's such a good performance. Andy Serkis did such a good job of emulating a lot of the actors while making them each uniquely his own, and I'm astounded by his ability to do that, and it makes me want to up my own game and in my own recordings. But it's just such a joy to listen to and to hear him just bring it all to life. Is Wonderland Trials fiction, or is that a nonfiction about Wonderland? And have you read Looking Glass Wars? Yeah, exactly. He's such a good voice actor. Underrated. I mean, obviously he's Gollum, so that makes him amazing. But a lot of times when he does other movies, he's still Andy Serkis, and the fact that he's just so immersed in this particular one is just is astounding. It's such a good audiobook. Cool. I don't know that I ever read number 3, but I read 1 and 2, and then read the graphic novels that was just about Hatter Madigan. Those are pretty cool. Very avant-garde for graphic novels. But he was such a cool character because he wasn't just crazy, but he was. But he's just a great secret agent with his awesome hat. And that came out before Wax and Wayne, so when we all got obsessed with hats, right? All right. So I think that's a good place to stop for tonight. As always, please make sure that you share your maps on social so we can see them. Yeah, I love seeing what you're working on. I love hearing what you're reading. Oh, did I say something different than Looking Glass Wars? Oh, yeah. I said sorry. That was me being silly. Yes, Looking Glass Wars is what I meant. And it's fun. It's basically Alice is, and it's not spoiler to say, Alice is basically a princess at the beginning in Wonderland, and there is a coup, and so she has to flee because of that. And hijinks ensue after that. But yeah, it's a pretty cool. It's a pretty cool. Pretty cool book, and easy to read. It doesn't come across as extremely YA. It's just very readable and enjoyable. So all right, so I'm gonna say good night and wish you all well. If you're watching right now, I know all of you are already following me. If anybody's watching after this live, please don't forget to subscribe, click the notification bell, and I will so you can get pinged for next week. And next week we'll be working on probably getting into some inks and starting to talk about what we can do to really make the whole map pop through that. So yes, thank you all so much for coming tonight. Obviously work on your maps now, later, anytime, and we will all come back next week, and we will get going on the next section. So have a great night, everybody, and I will talk to you later.
Happy little Map-ccidents with happy little pens. Let's journey down the road together and find out where it ends. Bring your creativity, forget what week will bring. Drawing, breathing, bringing all new worlds into being.